But without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Joe and Matt to kick things off. Joe, over to you.
Thank you very much for having us, Sam. And you said it was nice to have the SCA crew on. You just spent 10 minutes heckling us, so I don't know which one to believe, but it is lovely to be here, so thank you. And just before we kick off, I just wanted to say a huge thank you to the members on the call that participated in your recent poll survey. Myself and the team are, of course, very flattered with the results of those, and obviously I'm thrilled to know that we're adding value to your businesses, which really is what it's all about. Now, I'm sure we've obviously got a nice big target on the back, being voted as the #1 team, but we are very committed to retaining that spot. So if there is anything additional that myself or any member of our organisation can do for you to make your lives easier, please reach out at the end of the meeting today, and we'll see what we can do to help out. I'll now throw over to our National Head of Creativity, Matt Dickson, who's going to run you through a presentation on the power of audio and specifically how it interacts with the different stages of the marketing funnel. Now, before I start, before I throw to you, Matt, I do want to give you a bit of a pump up, as Matt and the team actually won a silver at the New York Advertising Awards last week, which is an outstanding achievement to be recognised internationally like that. It's such a coveted event. So the guys, to win that award, the guys composed an audio logo entirely made up of whale song for a campaign by Australian Ethical. So all of the royalties generated by the use of that audio were then donated back to whale conservation, which was, of course, a really nice touch and a brilliant use of creative. So, Matt, I will throw over to you, mate.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you very much. And thank you, everyone, for your time today. I know everyone's busy, and Monday is a furious day for everyone, so I very much appreciate your time. I'm going to take you through a presentation today just around, I guess, strengths of audio and some things you may not have realized about audio, and also some innovation. We have new products now, which means that radio works, or audio works, really well down the bottom of the funnel. I'll go through this a little bit later, but I put forward an argument that audio is the most effective platform all the way through the marketing funnel. You can execute any campaign using audio. Reach-wise, it is pretty much unbeatable, or at least easier to reach large audiences than most others. Consideration-wise, audio has access to great talent and live reads and podcast ads that are great at that kind of mid-funnel conversation. And then down the bottom of the funnel, audio has always been in that, well, since car radios are in cars, audio has been in the car. And if people are streaming our brands on a phone, we can even be in the store. So I think the problem with audio, though, when I go to my first slide, our relationship with audio is so innate that there are connections we don't even realize. And I've been in radio for 20-something years. And one thing I've noticed is we never get correct attribution for a campaign. So we will run a campaign, and maybe it's radio only. And then if the client asks people where they heard it or where they saw it, they very rarely say radio. And the problem is that it's somewhat of a background medium. But just because it's in the background doesn't mean that it's not powerful. Audio is really good at priming our other senses. I was literally just on another call with a guy who runs a neuro company, and he talked about audio in terms of passive but powerful. I often say that we trade portability and ubiquity for attention. Audio being a background medium, we do other things while we're listening. It means that your campaign either needs to lift itself into attention by being entertaining or standing out in some way, or it needs to work at a subconscious level like a jingle does, and I'll go through that shortly. Our relationship with audio really starts when we're in the womb, and interestingly, the music that we listen to and the music that we like is exactly the same range as our heartbeat, which was the first sound we heard when we were in the womb. So 60 BPM is about the slowest popular music that you'll hear, and 60 beats per minute is also your mum's heart rate at rest. So you're sitting down reading a book. 110 BPM is the most popular beat per minute range for music, and that would be the same as your heartbeat when you're up walking around. So, you know, a pretty simple connection, but one that we've probably never realized. If you move music outside of that, if you go lower than 60 beats per minute, or you go higher than 110 beats per minute, it starts to sound unnatural, and our brains don't like it. We are really embedded in this kind of 60 to 110 BPM range. We were talking about running earlier, and it's funny, there are loads of playlists where the beats per minute is the same as the cadence while you're running, because it's a really nice feeling to run to the beat of music, and you can kind of push yourself a bit more if you up the BPM as well. It's not the only relationship with audio that we have. If you look at, there are other things that you may not have realized are audio exercises. Poetry, and this gets a bit meta, but poetry isn't about looking at the shape of the words as you're reading them. It's about how the words sound when you play them to yourself in your head. So you read poetry, but you hear your own voice in your head saying the words. And it's how the relationship between those words, it's an audio exercise that happens completely in your brain. Stand-up comedy is a 40 to 50-year-old overweight guy standing on a stage with a stool and a glass of water. You don't need the visuals for stand-up comedy. I'm 46. I grew up with the 12th Man, Rodney Roode, Kevin Bloody Wilson. There were no visuals. You would sit around and everyone would listen to a cassette and laugh. Meditation, the first thing in pretty much every guided meditation that they say is close your eyes. You don't need your eyes. And what happens then is audio can lower your heart rate. It can change your emotional state purely through music and getting you to relax. And the other one is hypnotherapy. I don't know if anyone on the call has had hypnotherapy before. I did many years ago. And the way it works is you sit in a chair and you are distracted, as in you let your mind wander, and you have someone speak directly to your subconscious, and you can change lifelong habits like cigarette addiction, insomnia, anxiety, all using only audio. So, you know, for the brands and clients that you work with, to be able to use audio's powerful influence on our emotional state it's a very powerful tool to have. These are all audio-led activities, and it may or may not have occurred to you up until this point that those things are all audio-led and audio-dependent. So if we look at the marketing funnel, and this is a statement that I've been making in market for a while. I got in an argument with Adam Ferrier on LinkedIn not long ago about this very topic, and I'll go through that in a minute. I should also say, if anyone's got any questions, by all means jump in, or we can chat at the end. But the statement that I've boldly been making for a while, because I believe it, is that audio is the only medium that works effectively at every stage of the marketing funnel. If you compare it to TV, very hard to get significant reach on TV these days. I think the AFL Grand Final is one of the largest audiences, and it's still only, I think it's 2 million people. Very hard to get reach on TV. Digital, also very hard. Social, hard. Whereas audio, you can make one phone call to Joe, and I think we cover, I think it's 96% of Australia you can reach just using SCA. Then there's, to be balanced, there's also ARN, and they have a regional offering as well. So 2 phone calls will get you pretty much all of Australia. If you move to consideration, and this is interesting, this is where we have a longer conversation about brands, and we are looking to provide people more information and convince them of a product or service's appeal. Podcast ads are such a great place to do this. One, it is the most popular digital advertising format in the world. Host-read podcast ads are by far the preferred advertising format out of anything digital. And then if you go back to radio, live reads are a great way to have a conversation using a personality that people know and like. And again, you can do that right across Australia. We can put a live read in every regional radio station that we have, and that local person can talk about whatever the product is in a local context and provide that consideration. And then if we move to action, and I talked about this a little bit before, audio is king during the day. And that's when shops are open. It's also highly portable. So we're in the car when people are driving around. We can convince them to visit a particular shop. You know, there's huge amounts of power that we can have, and audiences in car, particularly obviously commuting, are quite large as well. So this is the statement that I put on LinkedIn. I said, this was a couple of days before I was doing a client presentation, and I thought I'll do a quick experiment. I'll put this up and see who bites. So I said, audio is the only platform that works well all the way through the marketing funnel. Prove me wrong, /fight me, /change my mind. On reflection, I should have also given people the option to agree with me. I didn't do that, and Adam Ferrier strongly disagreed. And I've said here the same things I've said: awareness, FM radio with broad reach, consideration podcast or talent-led campaigns, and action, shakeable ads, or smart speaker purchasing, which I'll get into. So Adam Ferrier took the bait, and he said video can be as well. So his argument is video works well all the way through the funnel. And then he also says even a static image with some long ad copy can do everything from awareness to mid-funnel consideration to conversion. But who has time to read long copy ads these days? We are exposed to more and more advertising every day. And also very hard to read a long copy ad in the car while not crashing into anyone else. And this is TV's weakness as well. TV, I would argue, these days has reach issues, or at least cost of reach issues. You can't watch TV in the car, although I have a friend that does. So it won't get you close to shops physically. And then also TV peaks when shops are shut. So unless you are making an online purchase, and I've got a stat from the ABS coming up, which will show you that online purchasing is still really quite low in Australia, then TV is not ideal there as well. But I'm not here to throw shit at TV. I'm here to advocate for audio. So I then quoted a study, which I'll go through in a minute, from Ipsos, that shows the hardest working part of any TV brand campaign is actually audio. So what this pointed out to me, though, one, Adam Ferrier is pretty arrogant, and two, he doesn't know what he doesn't know. There's a bunch of things about audio that he doesn't know. He doesn't know we have those sharp products down the bottom of the funnel. We can geofence a digital audio campaign around a shopping center or in a postcode, or we can change messaging according to location to get it really sharp. We have shakeable ads where if you're listening, you can shake your phone and it'll overlay a web page on your phone while you keep listening, so you can find out more information about a product while you're interested in it. He doesn't know those things, and so part of this presentation is to educate people, but we have those products. So if we go back in slightly more detail and look at the top of the funnel for awareness, there's a point I want to make, and this is, as I said, working in audio for a long time, this is frustrating. Branding is not a visual exercise. So many brands that we work with have a brand guideline book, and it's this thick, and it tells you what you can and can't do with the visual logo. But that's not brand. That is the device that you use to help people to visually represent your brand. Branding is about creating fame, feeling, and fluency in the minds of consumers. It's about driving preference through mental availability. When people buy things, they look at, if it's something they haven't bought for a while or something they haven't bought before, they look at a short list of brands and think, which one of these come to mind for starters, so mental availability, which ones feel like a good choice, and which ones do I understand? So that's that fame, feeling, and fluency. To give you an example, Renault sell about, I think it's 1 to 2% of the volume of cars that Toyota do in Australia. Yet Renault have an almost identical product range. They have a white van, a sedan, an SUV, a small hatchback, etc. The problem with Renault is, one, not everyone knows how to say it because it's French. Number two, there aren't that many Renault dealerships. They don't sponsor, they don't spend a lot of money on sponsorship. Maybe they sponsor Richmond Tigers. I'm not a footy fan, but someone on the call might be able to tell me. They just don't feel like as good a choice as Toyota. Toyota sponsor the AFL Grand Final. They've been around for a long time. So it's not about product, it's about brand in that case, because the products are pretty much identical. They're both built by robots. Doesn't matter what country the robot is in, it's still a car-making robot. So yeah, the point that I stress a lot is that branding is not a visual exercise, and we need to move away from thinking that it is. I was literally on a call with Zenith before this one where we talked about attention, and according to them, 15% of attention is visual. Because we are bombarded by so many things, only 15% of attention is visual. Which leads me to the attention economy, and I'm assuming most of you have been bothered by all the buzz around the attention economy, and I have a real issue with this. We've worked with Karen Nelson Field on looking at attention in audio, and how much attention people pay to advertising. And then there's, I mean, they're even getting into eye tracking of digital display ads and saying, all right, well, if someone doesn't, if their eyes don't land on it for longer than 2.5 seconds, then it shouldn't count as an impression. But all of this is exhausting because we're fighting for something that people don't want to give. They don't want to give brands their attention. They like brands, they don't hate brands, but they don't care about brands until they need to buy something. So why are we fighting so hard for something that people don't want to give? 5 years ago, every brief that I got was about disruption. It was a brief would land and it was, we need to disrupt people. We need to do something different and we need to disrupt. You know, we need to create a flash mob, or we need to do something that is going to be really disruptive. That might work as a sugar hit and it might lift you to high attention, but it's not going to create those lasting mental associations that you might have with brands. It's more a tactical exercise. And if you look at the attention economy overall, do you even need to participate in it? And I would argue, particularly at the top of the funnel where we're looking at awareness, my answer would be no. This is a quote from a guy named Robert Heath. He wrote a paper on low involvement processing, and it's been referenced in a lot of different places because it makes a lot of sense. And he says, we process advertising on an almost continual basis with great efficiency, but at low levels of involvement. In other words, we don't care. We are processing advertising all the time, but we're not really involved in it. This processing takes place passively and instinctively, predominantly using the right brain. Because the right brain is poor at analysis, it collects data as complete sets of sensory associations and transfers these directly into long-term memory. What that means is, I guess it's like hypnotherapy. Because you are somewhat distracted or you don't care, brands are able to float messages to your subconscious mind. Because your conscious isn't there to reject that message, it goes straight in. And I'll give you some examples. Aldi are in market and have been in market saying good different for ages. And part of our brain believes this, but when you think about it, Aldi is actually shit same. So Aldi products are, other than there's one cheese and it's like an oval shaped thing. Other than that, I would argue most Aldi products people would consider inferior to the regular product. I bought Aldi 2-minute noodles, which look like Maggi noodles, but they're not. And my kids won't eat them. They said that the flavor sachet tastes like socks. So Aldi, if you ask people, they'd say, oh yeah, Aldi good, different. But when you think about it, Aldi products are not as good and they're not different. They're the same. They're copies of other products. Another example, we talked about Toyota earlier. You know, for years, for 30, 40 years, Toyota have been saying, oh, what a feeling, Toyota. Now, I bought a Toyota this time last year and I love it, but it was underwhelming as a feeling. I just felt quite responsible because I bought a hire car, a car that other people usually hire. I'd bought a very reliable car with a somewhat boring interior. So it's not, oh, what a feeling. And there's a few of these. Woolworths, the fresh food people, is another example where I think it's around 6% of the store footprint of any Woolworths is fresh fruit and vegetables. That leaves 94% of the store has barcodes. So they're really Woolworths, the barcode people, not Woolworths, the fresh food people. And then finishing off Robert Heath's quote, when we come to make a purchase, these associations can exert a powerful influence on the decision about which brand to choose, even if we never think about them or actively analyze their meaning. Another quick example, doors plus no fuss. I recently bought a door. It was all of the fuss. It was the fussiest purchase I've ever made. I had to call them 5 times. But because I'd heard doors plus no fuss for the last 15, 20 years, they were on my list. They were the people that I wanted to call because they had that mental availability. I understand the brand. It feels familiar to me. I mentioned this study, and this is the one that I quoted to Adam Ferrier on LinkedIn. So a research company called Ipsos, they're based in France. They're, I think, the 3rd largest research company in the world. They did a study of video ads. They had, so TV ads, effectively. They had 2,500 TV ads, and they played them to 2,500 research respondents. After they'd played these ads to people, and it was in a typical viewing environment, so they were sitting on a couch. I think they were allowed to second screen. They tested people and they said, okay, which brands do you remember? And then they split those results into 3 terciles. So the high performing tercile were the ads that most people remembered the brand name for. Obviously average was average. And then low performing were the ads that no one really remembered who the brand was. And what they found was that if your TV ad contained sonic brand cues, as in a piece of branded music that you own, or an audio logo, like did somebody say menu log, your TV ad was nearly 9 times more likely to be in that top performing third for branded attention and recall. So Audio brand assets outperform visual brand assets, even in video-based ad formats. The hardest working part of a TV brand campaign is actually audio. So I would argue, save yourself the money on the pictures. You don't need them, and shops are shut, and brand on audio channels instead. I'm going to quickly take you through, this is a study we do every year called the Audio Logo Index. It's a study into audio brand effectiveness for Australian brands. It can be somewhat dry, so I won't take you through the whole thing, but there are a couple of top line learnings from it. Hopefully you can see that, but our top scoring brands were Bunnings, Toyota. Interesting, you know, they've both had audio brand assets in market for over 30 years. Bunnings, people love the Bunnings audio logo, I think because it's happy and it's celebratory and it's been around for a long time. So imagine having a brand asset that not only worked, but that people really loved. I don't know that anyone shares the same passion for visual logos. No one says, oh, I love the McDonald's logo or whatever it is. Sure, there are sports brands like Nike and things like that where people will choose to wear the logo. I do have a Bunnings umbrella, but I think you can drive a lot more emotional power with an audio logo than a visual logo. Interestingly, so our second summary learning from this was that QSR was the best performing industry, and it was driven by only two brands. It was McDonald's and Menulog. And Menulog's, did somebody say Menulog song jingle, is only about 1.5 years old. So granted, they spent $6 million last year, but it rocketed them to fame. I think if you look at the Menulog audio logo versus what Uber Eats do, they're two very different approaches for the same campaign. I would argue that Menulog are doing a much better job. They know people don't care about advertising, so they create an earworm that sticks in your mind. They have a distinctive color. Whereas Uber Eats campaigns are all very high involvement. They're all scan this QR code to see what Barty's going to do next, and no one cares. The third summary learning is melody and words. If you are creating an audio brand asset, give me my Makita back, or you know, there are loads of other examples. You need to use a melody, a musical melody that unlocks memory in people. If you think about the alphabet, you can teach a 4-year-old 26 unique characters in order just by singing them the alphabet song over and over. It's that repetition and melody that works things into your mind and they stay there. You also need to use your brand name in the audio logo. People like Telstra don't do it, and they suffer a lot of misattribution. There are a lot of people that, when asked, think the Telstra audio logo is for Officeworks or something else. Now, if you imagine that as a visual brand asset, imagine having an asset that people are guessing who it's for. Imagine your visual logo and people went, I don't know who that's for. Learning number 4, we covered Menulog, but it's worth mentioning on its own because they went from 0 into the top 10. They did everything right. So they used melody, they mentioned the brand name. The Snoop Dogg thing was funny because stoners and home food delivery, at least they're not out driving. And the Katy Perry one I find quite annoying, but it's still in my mind. And if I'm going to order food that a delivery driver is going to eat some of while he brings it to my house, then Menulog would be my pick. I mentioned misattribution a second ago, and this is really rife, and it's a problem. You need to create an audio logo that is distinctive on its own, rather than confusing it with something else. I can't play you audio on the call today because Google Meet won't play nice. But Telstra and Officeworks get confused a lot. Bendigo Bank and Toyota, there's this confusion. Whereas if you bake the brand name into your audio logo, Woolworths, the French food people, etc., then it goes in and it stays in. And then this study was from last year. It was late last year, but we saw some kind of bouncing around with COVID. Brands that were kind of more COVID relevant scored higher. SPC, because we were all eating tin food because we thought Armageddon was coming. Harvey Norman was where we spent our JobKeeper, and Jerry Harvey kept his. Myer, Bunnings as well. I mean, Bunnings was controversial. I think Bunnings closed for 2 weeks in Melbourne during lockdown, and that was like when everyone had really had enough. Before then, people were outraged that Bunnings was shut, whereas before then it had been open reliably. So really quickly, I won't harp on about audio branding, but from that study, what we know is using a melody encodes your brand into consumers' memories, including the brand name guarantees that you're not confused for someone else. And then frequency. This is the bit that everyone wants to avoid because it's expensive. But playing something frequently works its way into your mind as well. And again, you don't need attention. If you use melody and frequency, my kids know all the words to the new menu log song, the Katy Perry one, just because it's been on TV a heap of times. So moving down the funnel now, going to consideration. So kind of mid-funnel, where you're looking for more information about a product, and you probably want to qualify people a bit more. You don't need to speak to all people. You might start narrowing your targeting down. And this is where audio outshines other mediums as well. This is a slide from the Australian Talent Index, which is done each year. The people on here that are shaded in light blue are the ones that you can use on radio. So some of the most popular, most known, or most trusted celebrities in Australia, either you can have them talk about your brand pretty cheaply on radio, or you can advertise in their show or podcast in their environment, which will be more trusted because it's people that, it's celebrities that people know and like. To do this on TV is cost prohibitive, nigh on impossible. You can book a live read in Carrie and Tommy and have Carrie Bickmore talking about your product. But if you want to book her for TV, I'm assuming it's in the millions. I think maybe the last endorsed campaign she did was Garnier, and I'm guaranteed it would have been expensive. So again, that mid-funnel experience where we're looking at having a longer conversation, host read podcast ads by any of these people, live reads either regionally or in metro areas from a personality that people know and like, in a conversational style where you can deliver something without the pressure because you're asking people to consider a product. I defy any other medium to be able to do this as well. Someone mentioned a while ago, influencers on Instagram are good at mid-funnel, and I think they are, but I think you've got to pick your influencer, and I think they have a tendency to go rogue as well. Whether it's snorting white powder off a plate on video, what have you, there's a risk to your brand for using influencers, whereas these people all have stable careers in the media, and they're reliable people that are popular, well-known and trusted. And I guess that's the thing. Influencers are known on Instagram, but outside of Instagram, they're not famous. I also would argue people don't really care about Instagram influencers. I think they scroll through, and influencers are very obsessed with their community engagement, but it's not that much engagement. It's scrolling while you're sitting on the can. It's not the love that people have for Sam Pang and his kind of cynical humor, or Hamish and Andy and their hijinks. Then if we move to action, if we look at the bottom of the funnel where we're driving purchase, an argument that I often make is that we don't need to see a product to then be interested enough to search for it online. For so many years, I've been in briefings and a client will say, well, mate, people have got to see the product. And yes, they do. But we have this thing called the internet, and it's full of pictures and videos of products. And all we need to do is drive people there. If the end result is a search query or going online to find out more, then you want to look at the cheapest and most effective way to do that. And I would argue that it's audio, not TV. I was going to play an Ash Barty ad. We know this ad from the tennis last year. This is what happens when TV tries to work down the funnel. It had QR codes on the screen that you were meant to get up off the couch, grab your phone if it's in the same room, walk up to the TV and scan a QR code off the TV, which part of my ego just won't allow me to do. It also assumes that people are highly engaged and care about Uber Eats and care what Ash Barty is going to do next. I approach advertising from the point of view that no one really cares about brands. So either you've got to make them care by doing something that they're really going to like, or try and slide in past their defenses and create an earworm that's just going to work their way in and they're eventually going to like it. The difference though is audio works really well down the bottom of the funnel. And we have, I don't know if anyone on the call has bought Shake Me advertising for any of the clients that you work with. But the basic premise is you are listening on your phone to Listener, and you hear an ad and it says shake your phone now to find out more information. The great thing about this compared to where audio was 5-10 years ago, you'd hear an ad on your way into work in the car and you'd think, shit, I must look that up when I get to work. And you'd get to work and you'd go and make a coffee and someone would nag you about something and you'd get pulled into a meeting and then you've forgotten. So all of the heat that you created and the desire that you created in the moment to get people to find out more was lost because it then took so long for them to go and look. Whereas now with shakeable ads, we can reach people while they're passionate about whatever they've just heard and say, you know, shake your phone to enter a competition to find out more. And the interesting thing here too is that if the end objective is to get people to click on a link or visit a web page, it outperforms digital display quite comprehensively. So the average digital display click-through rate, and this is a very hard figure to get because it's atrocious. I rang the IAB and asked them to give me this figure, and they will not give out a quoted figure. I think this is an international figure. 0.014% is the CTR for digital display. Whereas with ShakeMe, our CTR or our shake-through rate is 2%. So it's significantly higher. I'm shit at maths, but I think it's about 20 times higher. And as I've said here, it's the ubiquity, engagement, and immediacy of audio with the measurement of a digital campaign. There are very few mediums that can do that and be so sharp down the bottom of the funnel. Another point to make here, and I kind of touched on this at the start, is according to the ABS, only around 8% of purchases are made online in Australia. So what about the other 92%? They're made in stores. And if you look at the in-store experience, audio is in the car, in the area, and even in the room when people are buying in store. You can, using Coles Radio, which we don't represent, but this is a balanced view of audio, you could play the Weet-Bix jingle, Aussie kids are Weet-Bix kids, to someone as they walk into Woolworths or while they're in Woolworths or Coles. And then when they get to the cereal aisle, whether they paid attention to it or not, you've primed them. This is the unique thing about audio, is that it can be passive, but it's still powerful. You can prime people. When they're standing in front of the cereal aisle, which cereal box do you think is going to stick out the most? It'll be the Weet-Bix one. And it doesn't matter whether they know they heard it or not. The thing with audio, if it's musical, it goes into your brain and it stays in regardless. You don't need to be paying attention. Think to the reference I made about hypnotherapy earlier. I don't need you to be paying attention for me to exert influence on what you're going to buy or to get you to remember something. In fact, you know, you can create an earworm, and despite that, people don't want to remember and they still do. I've got the ding dong, ring a ding 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 dong bit from the Katy Perry menu log audio logo / jingle stuck in my head because I think I heard it about 3 times on TV last night. So overall, looking at this, really audio is underdone in terms of attribution and in terms of its ability to work all the way through the funnel as well. Working in audio, I think we're probably privy to a lot of information that I've hopefully given you today that you may not have known about audio in terms of its ability to change your emotions, its ability to unlock memory, and then right down the bottom of the funnel, its ability to be there when you're making a purchase, which is really important.